kiss and hug me. Come on strong, go on and love me. Let's not waste that big old moon. Wake up and smell the perfume. Just say if you want to be more than friends. Got some love I'd like to make. Maybe you can squeeze me out of the way.
Hello, and welcome to Marketing Momentum with Charles and Deborah. This is episode number 2, and today we are talking about the less is more paradox. Hi, Charles.
Hey, Deborah, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting week, I think. Both in personally and just in general, kind of watching, all of these, all of these things kind of happen, in and around these businesses, right? You have the Paula Deen thing, and you've got Apple and all of this stuff, and yeah, it's been kind of interesting. But our subject though is less is more. So, I don't think we have an agenda, but I think, we just kind of want to talk about at least, and I know we've talked about this, that I think that, we both kind of found that you come into this, and whether you've come from corporate or whatever you come into, you get out of wanting to sell to everybody and wanting to be able to give information to anybody and wanting to be able to teach everybody. And then you find out that, first of all, not everybody even wants to hear from you. and then there is a voice in which you and somebody else can be talk, because I mean, you're into Google Hangouts, but I've heard maybe 3 or 4 people in talk about Google Hangouts, and you've got a particular pitch about it, and they've kind of got their thing going on. It's the same thing, but it's a different pitch, and it's almost like you've got to find your voice, and then you've got to really be willing to say, you know what, I might not be right for you. My product, my podcast, it might not be right for you. And then I think that's a hard thing. It's like one of the primary things that all of us have to get to the point where, not everybody is going to like you. And definitely not everybody. And not everybody's gonna, and to even take it. I mean, to take it further, not everybody's gonna buy from you. But have you found that to be the case? Especially because I know that you've got a unique show with Social Web Cafe, and I'm guessing some people kind of come through, and then then they don't come back. Mm-hmm. And then, but some people kind of get in there and they just stick, and you just kind of look at them and you think, man, there's something about you. Why didn't the other folks stick around too?
That's so true, because it seems like the people that I'm targeting or I think would be interested in this content may not be, but then there's other people. So I'm trying to figure out what is it. There's something that they're looking for that they're finding here, and to help define that target audience.
So. When you say, I know when I say target audience, I probably mean something, of course, because we're doing different things. When you say target audience, what are you sort of envisioning when you say target audience, right?
I don't know. I'm still defining it. Because I still want to be all things to all people. I mean, I know that, what is it, that saying, you can't please all of the people all the time, but you can please some of the people, or whatever that kind of thing. So I know that's the axiom, but I still try to strive to be all things. So I need to learn this whole less is more before burnout hits, Well,
it's interesting because, I've got a lot of, the people who are part of my, like the Game Mindshare community, they're mostly consultants, and they've typically been internet marketing consultants, many of whom have traveled the route through the Warrior Forum. They've bought information products. They've bought content-related products. They've written books, that kind of thing. And sometimes, I will send out an email, and I'll go through a period where I'll email every day, and then some periods I'll go through an email where I won't email at all for 2 weeks. But what I am beginning to find is that, like, the more I just really just kind of say what's kind of in here and not worry about the copywriting structure, it's kind of like I do better that way. It's kind of, and sometimes it doesn't always translate into like direct sales, but there's something about trying to get to this point where you're really speaking from here, and there are people that kind of hear you, and then there are other people who, they just hit unsubscribe as soon as you send it out. And I think it was there's a guy that I get emails from. His name is Ben Settle, and for the first time somebody said to me, and I've heard this before, but I think he put it right. He said, if you're not getting people to unsubscribe from your email, he said, you are not saying anything. You're not saying anything. You're not communicating to anybody because you're trying to say something to everybody so everybody sticks around. He said, you should have people who are just rabidly offended with you and say, I don't ever want to hear from you again. I'm walking away. And I mean, I haven't necessarily had that, but the more that I just kind of say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to try to put anything in any structure other than the one I'm comfortable with. Well, there are people who will take off as a result of that. And the funny thing about that, we're talking about momentum. The more that people kind of peel off, the more comfortable I am when I actually want to market something. And I actually say, you know what? Hey, you know what? I recommend this. Or, yeah, here's something. I haven't seen it, right? I haven't seen it. I haven't bought it. So I just want you to know, but here it is. If you want to buy it here, you can. I don't think I would feel that comfort level until I did what this guy's. I don't know if I did what he said, but when I saw this happen where you start communicating in the way you communicate and you start to see people leave, and then you can just kind of say, well, look, yeah, I'm sending this out because my daughter is graduating, whatever the case is. And I think it's actually increases the income because you're actually kind of getting to the people in a way that they understand you and you understand them. I don't know if you found that or
you're
not.
You're being real. And they can connect with that because it's the real Charles rather than the copy surrounding all the context. As far as that you're trying to sound like everybody else, you're actually sounding like yourself. And I think people really ultimately, no matter how much marketing is out there and saying, oh, you should say this, you should say this, people really, I think at the core, want to connect with the people.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I understand you got to have, I went through this where, okay, I'm not gonna use a headline. I'm too good for headlines. Well, that kind of stuff.
I'm sorry, just the way you said it.
I'm not gonna use any of that stuff because, I'm just gonna be myself. There are some baseline things I think that, we've got to do. But again, I think we've just got to be in this long enough before those baseline things become sort of part of us, and then we can kind of be who we are. Because I think we were talking about this last week, that some of this stuff, you just have to be in this. You got to stick with one thing long enough. Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm at right now, is building that consistency so people know at this time, it's live marketing momentum, and at this time you can see this week's episode, so that when they look at the content, they can start to have that expectation that this is when new content's coming out, and that saying, hey, we're consistent at this.
But you've also been doing Hangouts for a while, and I think that's important today. But I mean, it's for real, because again, right now they're hot, right? Mm-hmm. Hangouts are hot right now, but now so is Vine, right? Vine is hot. So, everybody's running to go do Vine now. And then Instagram is hot.
Instagram, yep.
Right, so everybody's going to run to do Instagram. And then some people are going to say, Well, yeah, I know. I'm gonna get around to doing Hangouts, but I gotta learn Vine, and eventually, it's like everything else. Even the big craze that video is supposed to be the big thing now. Something else is gonna come along, and then the people who just kind of stick with it, they're gonna see the success, because you can't do all this stuff, right?
Mm-mm.
You
have
can't.
to balance.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, you can't learn. You can't be an SEO guru and then 2 years later you become, the social, media ninja, and then, now it's video, and then, now it's, what is it? I don't even know what you call Vine and Instagram. Is it micro video or mobile video? You
Oh,
can't
that's good.
be all this.
Yeah.
And
I
you
spent an
can't.
hour just playing with Instagram.
Right.
Get a Hangout
and-
clip to work, and it doesn't work the way I want it to work because it's not Google Hangout.
And I don't, for the life of me, excuse me, I don't understand. I don't really even understand Vine. So you've
You mean
got
the
6 seconds to
2-second?
get it all said.
Like, it's like, okay, I don't know if this is all devices, but I had like 2 seconds stop, 2 seconds. I'm going to do it. I'm going to find, you do something funny, Charles, on this Hangout, which isn't too hard to find. And I'm going to go capture it and get it on Vine.
But I mean, it's like, I think, eventually Hangouts, the dust is gonna settle, and then there's gonna be you, there's gonna be a couple of other folks, right, who have just said, hey, this is my thing, right? Because the same thing's true with Blog Talk Radio, because I mean, there is a temptation now, and I feel it myself, that, hey, maybe I need to try to switch over into something else. But it's almost kind of like you kind of get out of your groove, and if you start toying with it too much, like some stuff you have to incorporate because the market changes, right? I think Google Hangouts is a game changer, and everybody has to kind of somehow figure out how it fits into what they're doing. At the same time, though, I don't think that everybody can make it the centerpiece, even though everybody's going to try, because it's being said that you have to try to make it the centerpiece. Everybody needs to incorporate it, but not everybody can be you. You know what I mean?
Yep. Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. But I totally, on a time level, I may have it smooth enough that I could roll out of bed and 3 minutes later be all ready for okay, maybe a little longer on the hair, the makeup, but you know what I mean? It's like, bang, bang, we're ready to go. But there's still time consuming. There's still, the setup, the whole thing. You can't do it 24/7 or you're going to be a crazy person, unless that's what you're marketing is that, Deborah,
Right.
the crazy person, but that's not, that's not my value proposition.
But you like doing them, though. Not that I don't, but you like doing them. And I think, man, that's got to be, it's important. I mean, because if you didn't want to be in front of the camera on Google, it would bomb. And I think, eventually the dust is going to settle, even on all the craze toward video. I think the dust is going to settle, and people are going to fall where they're going to fall. There are always going to be people who are going to drift to everything, any and everything. But there are going to be people who are going to be just, phenomenal at video in 3 years. They're going to be so good at it that people who want to come in, they're going to see them and they're going to say, well, maybe I better do something else, because they're just great. They're going to be people who are going to be so incredibly accomplished at Hangouts that it's kind of going to be like, well, maybe I do need to do them, but not all the time, because I can't come up to that level of excellence naturally. And I think, it's like everybody's got to kind of like pick something and just stick with it and just become just phenomenal at it until you start to see the income kind of match that level of excellence, but I don't know that you get that until you kind of pay your what is
Paid.
Malcolm Gladwell say? 10,000 hours, right? He says that experts have to be in something 10,000 hours, right? And it's almost like we're still trying to mess with that equation. We still someplace in our brains think that it doesn't apply to us. So I'm going to get, Deborah Anderson does Hangouts. So I'm going to get in Hangouts. I'm going to be an expert too. I'm going to be great at that. Maybe not. Maybe the equation is just, hey, you know what? If you want to be good, maybe you'll get to be okay, right? Because you got some natural talent. But it's almost like I don't think that the internet changes that 10,000 hour equation. I don't.
I think you're absolutely right. We were just we were talking about how we're approaching the 1-year anniversary of the My Blog Guest Hangout, and that's really where I started. I'm almost embarrassed to say that it's been that short of a period of time, but when we looked at, my husband and I were viewing them, it's like, oh my word! I mean, it's like night and day. I don't want to invite anyone to go look at the August My Blog Guest. That's the one where I look like I'm translucent. You can see through me or whatever. But you look at the progression, and it's almost like it's exponential as far as the quality. But I do these like 2 to 3 times a week. So if I'm not getting better at it, there's something wrong with me, and this is not my niche.
But I mean, but you get better to some degree by doing it 2-3 times a week. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's kind of like it's not a hobby. It's not.
No, it's past that. It's now work. No. I mean, it's not work because it gets easier, but it's like when you do it that often, you get an opportunity to overcome the Google glitches. Not that Google has a lot of them, but you get a few more things thrown at you because you're actually doing it so frequently.
Yeah, and really, again, we talk about less is more. It means then that you cannot possibly be like the queen of Blog Talk Radio, right? You can't. You're probably not going to be. I don't know what the guy's name, copy blogger or whatever his name is, right? I mean, because you. And man, I was talking to my wife about this, and I was just thinking. I said, honey, I think the key to this, just what we're talking about now, is, well, maybe, you can't do, maybe, I don't care what everybody, maybe everybody says you got to do Twitter and Facebook and but maybe not. Maybe you just got to get your thing and you got to work that one thing and become phenomenal. And then, if you must do those other things, then you get somebody else to do them for you. Mm-hmm. But you don't get that until you get to be phenomenal at something, right? It's kind of like you have to be the guy that wrote that book, and I wish I had it up here. I think his name is Cal Newport, right?
You're a walking encyclopedia, Charles. I just gotta say. You pull this out. I'm not seeing you read anything. You're just like pulling this stuff out on naming people. That's awesome. But okay, so anyway, we're talking about.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm horrible with faces. It's good with names. So if I see you on the street, don't be offended if I walk right past you. But
okay, thank you for telling me that. Just
he wrote this book called "So Good They Can't Ignore You," and he was quoting Steve Martin, and because they asked Steve Martin, say, okay, why are you so good at being a comic in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and even now?
Like,
why are you still? And he is, and he's still good, and he's still funny, right? Well, I mean, we're probably telling on ourselves, right, by saying how funny he was back then, but he said you have to be so good they can't ignore you. And so what Cal Newport did was he took that concept and he basically has a theory in this book, and the theory goes something like this. Most people follow their passion. He said, but that is probably not going to lead to success as fast as doing something that you were so good that you cannot be ignored. And it's almost the polar opposite of what we, not polar opposite, but not necessarily what we hear, right? Because, when you hear about blogging, you say, well, find something that you're passionate about. Well, maybe, because just because you're passionate about it doesn't mean you're good at it. And if you're not good at it, I don't want to hear from you, right? And the reason that people want to come to your hangout is because you're good at it and you work at it, right? It's kind of like you got to be good at it, and then you have to work at it, and you got to work it like it's a job. And until it becomes that, it's like. But the hard part, I think, is what we're talking about, which is you decide what you cannot do. You decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do Hangouts. Well, I can't be all these other things, right? I can't be super blogger. I can't be, I can't do lots of screencasts. I can't do all this other stuff and just have this program that is over the top good. And I think that's the hard part, because all of us sort of want to be good at everything, right? And we want to bring all this stuff to the table. And we're not experts at anything, right? And we never get really good at anything. And I think I noticed this. I know you probably follow people in certain sectors. I follow these guys at Real SEO, right? And every so often, they'll put on somebody that is a vlogger. Now, that's got its own, kind of thing in and of itself. But the people who are very good at it, well, some of them don't have blogs, right? Some of them only do Twitter every so often. They're focused on that video. That's it. That's all they focus on. And when the video comes out, it's something you want to watch. Well, go figure, because they worked on the thing all week. It's like, and the whole psychology, I think, is almost kind of like, it's one of these things that I think to some degree we've all got to come to grips with, that we have to, if we're going to be so good that we can't be ignored, that we make choices about what we cannot do. And that's a risk, right? And I think that's the thing, that's the hard thing, because you say, I'm going to take the risk. I'm not going to do Facebook this week. I don't have time to do Facebook, because I want this thing to be so good that I'm going to put all of my time and energy, and I'm going to risk not being on all this stuff. And then I'm going to make sure this thing, when it comes out, that other people say, you know what, you got to see this Hangout. This is just the best thing I've ever seen, as opposed to, well, I got to be on all these social media because I got to make sure I distribute it all, and it's not really all that good because your time is stretched, right? When maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's, because all it really takes is one person to say, have you seen this thing? And we've all gotten videos and emails sent to us like this, right? You have got to see this. This is one of the best things I've ever seen. And then we all watch it. I'm not saying we all got to have stuff that goes viral, but I think it's right. At some point.
You're absolutely right. If you get like something from a friend, I will go watch it because a friend sent it to me, so I can say, oh, thank you. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then it's like, wow, that's really good. I got to share it with a friend.
Right. So, I guess I'm really, and I'm trying to get my daughter, right, to read this book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. I'm all excited about it. I'm saying, hey, you got to read this. And of course she's like, yeah. Okay, okay,
break
Dad.
Dad. I don't want to.
Hey, right. Okay, Dad. Because it's kind of like it's the opposite of what you hear. You hear, go, follow that place in your heart that you really want to go, and put your whole heart into it. Yeah, a little bit, right? Maybe the start, maybe at least some of it is, well, man, you're really good at this, right? You like you're really good at this. and people react to it, and then you know, it might not necessarily be what you like, what excites you and wakes you up in the morning, but it's probably the thing that people are willing to pay you for more.
That's good.
So,
That's a good thing. And you probably don't hate it if you're doing hopefully.
And you know, you can learn to like something when it pays you well.
Oh, definitely. And you know, okay, this, I don't know that this is exactly related, but it keeps popping in my head as you're talking. But somebody, and I probably said this in our interview when we did that, but the Thrive Conference, they're talking about creating a sense of belonging rather than going and trying to belong to all these social media groups and like following after them and chasing everything. Create a sense of belonging. And it's not that it has to be it's not all about me. It's not all about Charles. But if you are comfortable in your own skin, I keep thinking of Fonzie. Fonzie's great. This really, I know this dates us, but I used to give this advice even to my kids. I'm like, you know what, when other kids...
I should be saying, who's Fonzie?
Yeah, that'd be good. Okay, if you don't know who he is, you got to check out Netflix because he's got it all together as far as, you know, snapping his fingers when the girls come.
I know who he is, right?
No, I know you do, but I'm trying to, you know, wing. But, you know, remind my kids, it's like you create that sense of belonging. Don't be cocky. Don't be egotistical. When people are picking on you, you just be confident, but not in your face. Be confident that you know who you are, you're comfortable in your own skin. And you know what? People start to be drawn to that. And it worked with, I'm not saying my kids went through this major bullying thing, but it worked. That was the advice I gave them, and they were able. My son now is a leader in his school because he cares about people, and he didn't take it personally, and he didn't go try to be a part of every group out there. Like you said, less is more. Create a sense of belonging. People want to be a part of that. People want to be loved. People want to feel warm and fuzzy, even if they tell you they don't. I think they do.
No, they do. They do. And when you can get that as a, I think you can get that as a student, right? I mean, I don't know how many, you know, college age kids would ever even see this, but I think, you know, the funny thing is, you know, I think we spend time well into our 60s working out things.
I know you're not there yet, by the way.
But, you know, it's like, you know, the stuff you deal with, that's the hard stuff, is stuff that you maybe never got straight out of junior high. You know, it's still kind of like this thing that kind of, and so, I mean, all that stuff is so, I think, important because, and I think that's what I really like about the age that we're in now, because you really can create your own sense of belonging, and you don't have to, and it's not even about not following the rules. It really is about really, you know, kind of getting in here, because in business, it really is true. And that's what I was kind of thinking about. And I'm not really so much into the controversy that, you know, was going on with Paula Deen. But this is what I said to somebody. I said, there are going to be some people who will buy from her, and it doesn't matter how many people drop her, right? Because now distribution channels are open. You can get anything you want to from Amazon or eBay. And people are going to buy her stuff. And there are going to be people who follow her because now she has a group of people who like her and will follow her. And I think it's kind of like she's created her own. Now, she may have done damage to that, but honestly, and I could be off on this. I haven't even thought about this. I don't know that branding is an information age thing. I think branding is an industrial age thing. I think branding is an old thing. Because branding is kind of like, it's kind of like what I say about myself. Well, who cares what you say about yourself, right? It's really about what these people who are willing to spend money with you, right? That's what matters. And they don't care. Honestly and truly, I don't think the people that I buy from, I'm not thinking about their brand. I know I'm not unusual in that. So I don't think people are like, oh, you know, I'm mesmerized by your brand, I'm going to go. It's not like that anymore, I don't think. Not in everything. And I'm kind of working with this thing. I don't know that branding the way we understand it is always relevant today. I think it really is about what you're talking about. You create this sense of belonging, and people sort of feel like they belong to you, and you kind of go through these ups and you kind of go through these downs. I mean, you can call it a personal brand if you want, but it's you. You know what I mean? It's you. It's not this aura that you create. And I think that's what I don't like about it. It's not like a brand is sort of something I create. Well, I got to live, because it's almost like I have to live up to a brand. Well, I don't buy from people because they create something that I like. I buy from somebody, right? Especially as an information marketer, the way you and I are, that we think can get us from some results, and they kind of got through here, right? They cut through all the clutter. You're absolutely right. They cut through all the clutter, and I heard them. So we all have a gazillion voices coming to us every single day, and two people can cut through the clutter. Has nothing to do with brand, I don't think, right? Because talk about
as you're describing this, I'm thinking, okay, this is the girly side, all right? I'm thinking MAC Cosmetics, and I won't just go buy a knockoff. In fact, I won't buy it on Amazon because I'm not sure if it's actually the MAC Cosmetics. I will go right to their site. So I'm listening to you going, is it about the brand? I know that I'm actually going there because I like the product and I trust the product, and it's not going to let me down because they have a quality product, and I don't see where they're going to change that overnight and it's all of a sudden going to be a bad product. Right. But as you talk about like information products, absolutely 100%. You're right. It's who gets through to me. Who is it that I feel like I'm connecting and I'm actually absorbing knowledge?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned who was it, Eileen? Like 10,000 voices every day, and she can get right through. I mean, that has. I
was thinking of her as you were talking. I was like, don't say Eileen again in a video. She'd be like, I'm stalking Eileen Smith. No. No, I really would. But when her emails come in, as with yours, by the way, Charles, and not just because you're you, but I mean, you are breaking through. You're one of those people. And the other one is Tyler Perry. And what he writes doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what I'm doing. But he writes from the heart. And I'm like, I want to hear what's going on in his life, not because I'm nosy about his life, but because he's going to have a take on it, something that he learned. And that reaches me.
And I can learn from it. It doesn't have to do anything from business. And I feel the same way. I mean, I see some of his Facebook posts, and I stop to read them, right? You stop what you're doing for these people, right? And I think that's really, and again, man, you can't get that until you get good at something.
Okay, Medea's pretty good. I got it. He has her say everything you want to say, and you just can't say it. Okay.
No, I mean, no, for real. I mean, I really, and if you can think of some things I can get my daughter to read this book, put
Medea in it. Then.
But man, I mean, as I think about it, I think that's really the right. Whether or not you choose to be prolific at all the mediums, and I could be going overboard with that, but you really do have to be so good you can't be ignored in this age, because you have to cut through the clutter to reach somebody, otherwise you go broke. I mean, if you can't, it's nice to be able to do all these things, but at some point you've got to have, not you personally, but a person has got to have this group of people who say, you know what, I will even listen to, I may not buy today from Deborah, but if she says I think she ought to buy this, if she says I ought to buy this, I'll put this on a list of things I probably ought to buy, when everybody and their mama is sending me emails and talking to me on social media and telling me what I got to do. I'm not going to listen to all those people. I'm going to listen to this one person.
And that's exactly the effect that Eileen Smith has because she has never steered me wrong. She offers it sincerely. I don't think that Eileen Smith is God. She's a human being that cares and is real and is transparent, and I'm drawn to that.
Right, man. And but she's kind of done her thing, and as I understand it, I mean, I've only kind of come in contact with her probably the last couple of months, but if you check that blog that she's been working on, there's a lot of work that went into that.
Yes.
I mean, she didn't just sprout up out the ground. Man, I mean, there's a lot of work that went into making that what it is. And so now she's able to kind of branch out and do all this other stuff. But I bet that there were like a lot of months where, you know, there probably wasn't a lot of traffic coming to the blog, and there probably was a lot of months where, you know, SEO wasn't working or none of that stuff, and she had to get through that by just working on that blog. You don't get that by trying to work on everything.
Exactly. And she built up, I mean, speaking of marketing momentum, she somehow built up the momentum that now she does more and more. You look at it and go, how does that all fit within a 24-hour period? I mean, she works a day job. She hasn't been doing blogging for 50 years. Well, blogging obviously hasn't been around that long. Yeah. But when she talks about how she accidentally got into it when she's trying to read her daughter's blog, she's new like the rest of us, but somehow she built up that momentum and kept it going, and she was real. She never sacrificed who she was.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that the key to real momentum at some point is, you know, we all have to grow up and decide, you know, which candy we want. I mean, you know, you can't have the chocolate and the lollipops and all the other stuff. You decide on, okay, well, I'm going to have this one thing. If I can only have one piece of candy, well, this is the one I'm going to have, and I'm going to enjoy this one, and I'm going to, that means that I got to give up on all the other stuff. And I think, right, at least that's what I'm finding, that leads to more, at least to a platform for more income if you kind of stick with that thing, you know. And I've got my own crossroads right now. I mean, I've got to decide on what does it mean to do, you know, these blog talk radio shows. What does it mean to incorporate video? Does it mean that I incorporate Hangouts? Does it mean that I become a Hangout person? I don't know what that means. But as just this week, I was just thinking, you know what? I don't know if it will ever be the centerpiece, because I look at someone like you, and you are working out all of these little things, right? Mm-hmm. All these little things. And they don't
you think you have it, something else brings up another little thing.
Something happens, right? And you think, how did that happen? I know a lot of those things about Blog Talk Radio, interestingly, you know, and yes, it could be said that video is going to pass me by, but maybe it isn't.
Maybe it's a side dish. It's not your main entree, but it might be a side dish, and maybe it's once a week.
And it was interesting. I met a gentleman the other day, and he was a host, and he had just had his millionth show since 2007. Right, he's
busy.
Interviewed his, or something. Not his millionth show, but maybe he had, I don't know, maybe a millionth listener. I don't know, something big. And but again, you know, this guy said, you know, he just committed to the medium. At 2007, he committed to Blog Talk Radio. He said, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to focus on this thing. And so I'm guessing, what was it, this year? Well, then, you know, because he works with authors. So this year he had Joan Collins on his show, right? And
not
so
too shabby.
Joan, not too bad for Blog Talk Radio, yep. Right? That opened the door to all of these A-list people on Blog Talk Radio.
Wow.
But A-list, you don't get Joan Collins until you got a shovel, right? But pretty sure in 2009, probably didn't want to do the show. He said, well, I didn't, there are a lot of weeks I didn't want to do the show, right? But I did it every week, faithfully.
But
and
that consistency.
As you were saying, that consistency, now he's got A-list people on this internet radio show. I bet there are a lot of terrestrial radio people who would cut off their finger to have Joan Collins on their show.
Yep.
Right, and probably feel like, well, who's this little punk think he is? Does not matter. This guy was working at this thing, doing 2 shows a day since 2006, 2007.
Paid his dues.
So, paid his dues. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I don't think there is any other way.
I think hard still, I'm one of these that thinks that it's hard work that pays off. I mean, sometimes that opportunity comes your way, but I still think that hard work is the best way to be ready for the opportunity. Like Steve Harrison talks about the quantum leap. And you have to be ready for the quantum leap. Rather than looking for the get rich quick that's going to happen around the corner, work, like that plod horse. Just keep working and working, that consistency. And like we've been talking this half hour as far as the less is more, and watch for your quantum leap. He had that quantum leap with the Joan Collins interview.
Yep. Yeah. And that was that kind of, I was really just kind of waning a little bit, and then it was almost kind of like this guy just kind of came along and he said, well, Charles, you gotta stick it, you gotta stick in there, you gotta just keep doing it, just be there. And if you can't, and I think that's the key with anything, right? I was involved, because some of it's easy when you're employed, right? I used to work as a commercial banker, right? And by the time I left, I knew how to evaluate whether or not a company needed to have money. I knew how to read financial statements. I can still read financial statements. But it's interesting. When I first sat down, and I'd been through college and I'd had finance, when I first sat down with a real financial statement with a real borrower, right? It's amazing. I was petrified to send the loan papers in, petrified to go to somebody and say, okay, I think this customer needs, X amount of dollars. But by the time I left, it's like every day I had to just come in and just basically, it wasn't until I saw a gazillion financial statements that I could look at a borrower and say, you know what, I would go to bat for you just based on you're sitting across the table from me. I can look at you and kind of tell. I can look at your financial statement. I can read your eye, and I know I'm willing to go to my boss and committee and say to bat for you. But then and the opposite is true. You could kind of look at a financial statement, and it could be perfect. But I could look in somebody's eye, and I could say, you know what? This guy's going to stick me. This is going to be the guy that will take me down. And I will not go to bat for this guy. I don't care how perfect his financial statement is, but it's just something about having done that for 4 years of reading financial statements, get my brain
and reading people
beat in by my boss, and reading people, and making bad loans.
No, not Charles. That's how you get that experience. That's how you become an expert.
When somebody comes with everything perfect, and they're the ones that go running off in the middle of the night with the bank's money, right? And you're the one stuck trying to explain, well, what exactly
thought they were. They look like a good person. Pet their puppy, but
Exactly. Oh, man. It's interesting because this couple, they owned a bus company, right? And so what happened was they owned the bus company 50%, right? So they hired in like another guy. They brought in a partner. And so they did this without, we have loan covenants. You're not supposed to do this stuff without our permission. Well, they did it, right? They brought in a third person, and You know what happens when you got a husband and wife owning a bus company and they bring in a partner?
What happens?
The wife ran off with the partner.
Okay, I was
and
so
they
thinking
cut
that,
out
but I'm like, I can't say that. I'm like so thinking. Okay, the wife ended up in bed with it. No.
and they cut him out.
Oh.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, but again, I mean, that's how you don't learn until you get your brains beat out.
Yep.
And you don't get your brains beat out until you're there every day.
And us humans don't change. I don't care how many centuries pass. We think that. There's certain human behaviors that just.
Because you didn't even have to be a commercial banker, and you knew what happened already with it.
Yep. I just didn't want to think that. I was like, okay, what's the positive? This is what I'm thinking, but.
No funny story on that one. No. Yeah.
So Charles, if we had to come up with an action step, okay, this is what's in my head. I'm curious what you think. If someone had to list out all the things they're involved in, and I don't mean, I go to the bathroom at 9:13 every morning, or let's not get really granular here or something, but just in general, the different projects they're involved in on a daily, maybe weekly basis, and then went through and actually crossed off the things that are not necessary to try to get to that less is more, to try to target in on what's actually working for them, and that would eventually be that income that they need.
Right. I think the number one thing is decide on what really makes you money.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain
that's
things
almost too easy.
I mean, it's easy, but it's hard because the stuff that really makes you money is sometimes it's the stuff you just don't like, right? Not you personally, but it's just stuff that you just don't like. And you have to kind of put that at the top of the list, because if you can't keep your lights on, you can't continue to do the things you like to do. So those are the things that have to be done. And they need to be done well, and they need to be done with excellence. And then before you know it, then you kind of back into the other things. So I think you sort of prioritize this list by, okay, what am I really good at? Where do I provide the most value? Where do I get compensated for that value? And then those things kind of go toward the top. And then the other things where maybe I like them, but I'm not necessarily providing the kind of value to people that they're willing to compensate me for right now. Well, maybe you move those things down, right? And then start working to maximize these things up here, so that you create the kind of leverage that you need in order to have these other. You can eventually come back to do these things that are further down the list. It's a hard thing to do because it's an emotional thing, right? Because because look, some people make money because they write well, and they write the kind of stuff that people like in a particular niche.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they got to start their day and get that stuff done. They got to start their month. They got to start the first quarter saying, okay, you know what? Here's my income goal. I know I can get it with this. You got to start there, because otherwise these other things, these things down here typically require more money. They require a little more investment, but they're just not as profitable. And they've got a long-term payoff. But you've got to kind of get the things that make you money done and wipe them out, and then start worrying about the other stuff, right? And for those of us who are building stuff,
you got to do what keeps, like you said earlier, what keeps the lights on. Do that first.
It got to be done first, and that's a hard thing, I think. That's a hard thing. Kids are happier. Spouses are happier.
Your life is better if your spouse and kids are happy.
Right. Life is better. You have more time to spend on, God forbid, going to the mall. You got more time for that stuff. You have a little more money in your pocket. You have a little more things you can invest in. You can go on college. You can do all kinds of stuff when those things are taken care of. But when you're sort of not doing those things, and kind of working on these things down here because, man, they just kind of give you spark and they give you life. Well, that goes back to, I think, the whole passion versus what are you good at? Where does one provide the most value, because you get compensated the best and you get compensated for the least amount of your time. Those are the things that just have to be done, I think, and then come back to that passion point with and plan that out so that, yeah, you do get to do those things, but they come second. That's the action step.
At the end, rather than gorge you in chocolate at the beginning thinking you're going to get that momentum, save that chocolate for the end.
For breakfast.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, right on.
That'd be good. Well, Charles, this has been awesome. I keep talking to you, but honestly, I have like 5% of my battery, and I'm like, I want to make sure we have a closing before it's like all of a sudden, and we're gone.
You're right.
It's like that's seriously one of the things I tell people in Hangouts. So you have to plug in. Don't go on the battery, but I can break rules. But it's been wonderful chatting with you.
No, thank you. Thanks for getting together. It's powerful concepts, I think.
Excellent. All right, we'll chat next week, same time, same place.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Don't you wanna kiss and hug me? Come on, strong, go on and love me. Let's not waste that big old moon. Wake up and smell the perfume. Just say, if you wanna be more than friends, got some love I'd like to make. Baby, you can squeeze me, I won't break. We could be in a paradise, you and me. Until then, I'll remind you again. Just say when. Oh yeah, until then, I'll remind you again. Just say when. Oh baby, just say when.